Okay. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Oswego County Industrial Development Agency meeting of August 23rd, 2021. Before we begin, I'm going to have our Secretary Treasurer Lenchick do kind of a roll call for a quorum and also introduce a guest that's in attendance today.
Okay, Gary Toth.
Here?
Tim Saul.
Here.
Morris Sabella.
Here.
Larry Triple. Here. Len Schick is here. That is 5 attending, which makes a quorum.
Okay, now I'd like to have staff introduce themselves too.
Mike Treadwell, CEO of the IDA.
Kevin Caracoli, General Counsel to the IDA.
Teresa Wilson, Operations Oswego County.
Austin Mulek, Deputy Director of Operations, Oswego County, and staff for IDA.
Okay, thank you. And also I'd like to introduce a guest that we have with us today. Welcome, Miranda. It's Miranda McDermott. She's the Executive Director of the Oswego School District Public Library.
Hi.
So, welcome and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, did everybody get a chance to open the portal and check it out?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Is everybody good with the portal? I think it's a great idea. It saves the mailing. So, all right. So the minutes were there. Do I have a motion on the minutes of July 29th's meeting?
Make a motion.
Motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and second on accepting the minutes of July 29, 2021. Are there any additions, errors, or corrections? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Being absent, I will abstain.
Pardon?
I said being absent, I will abstain.
Okay, thank you. All right, motion passed. Minutes are accepted. Okay, the notice of the meeting was in the Palladium Times on August 13th, 2021. The treasurer's report. Everybody get a chance to review the treasurer's report again? I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
We'll move it.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to accept the treasurer's report of June 30th, 2021. Are there any additions, errors, or corrections in the report? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the treasurer's report is carried. All right, Miranda?
Sure.
If you'd like to address the board, we're more than willing to listen to what you have to say.
Okay, great. So I was approached by a company called R.W. Baird and Company, which is a financial firm in the downstate area, about a possible bond refinancing for the library. So when we had our renovation in 2004 to 2008, it was a $6 million renovation of the building, which now is 24,000 square feet. So we financed that at bonds. At the time, it was 4.8% or so. And so this company contacted us, I guess because of COVID, the interest rates are much lower now. So they're about 2.8%. So Baird and Company contacted us and connected with Bond Schoenig and King, which is a legal firm in Syracuse that helped us with the original bond financing. So they wanted to refinance the bond at the lower rate, which would save us about $750,000 in the next 15 years that we have to repay the bond. So we had to check with IDA and see if they could refinance the bonds at a lower rate. Then we found out that they couldn't do it because now they can't issue tax-exempt bonds. So the person from Baird and Company and Bond Schoenig and King worked with your counsel, Barclay, to find a local development corporation that can refinance the bonds at the lower rate. So they're currently working together, and Bond Schoenig and King did a presentation at the last board meeting of the library, and the board felt they needed more information, so they're doing a Zoom meeting with Bond Schoenig and King and Baird and Company in September, and hopefully they'll vote to approve it for closing in December. So that would save us a lot of money, and we're grateful for the help that we've gotten from IDA and their counsel, so thank you for that.
Let me clarify one more thing. The agency is restricted by the state of New York for issuing 501c civic facility bonds, which the library is. We're not restricted from issuing small issue tax exempt bonds for manufacturing companies and such.
Thank you for that.
So who are you dealing with now for the civic facility bonds?
Matt from Bond Shernick and King and Baird and Company, Craig, they're dealing with that portion of it. I could get back to you if you would like to know the name of the council or the person from the LDC.
Yeah.
Would you like me to get back to you about that?
It's, his name escapes me as well, but I've participated in these phone calls with Connie Call and Amanda Fitzgerald and the team at Barclay Damon. I believe that we have another call set up for around the 10th.
Yes, September 10th.
Is that before or after the school district presentation?
So the school district presentation is on September 7th, so it's gonna
Okay.
be after that.
Yep.
So hopefully I'm gonna try to get the vote on September 7th, but if we can't, if the board feels like they need more information, we might have to vote on 9/14, which is another board meeting.
So the idea here is we had, if you recall, a few years back, the county originally established the Oswego County Civic Facilities
I was gonna ask that question.
Corporation,
Yeah.
right? But it was set up in anticipation of potential opportunities that never came to fruition. And it was somewhat shelved, to be candid, you know. It was made up of several county representatives, IDA representatives, and then at some point it transferred the county's consent to essentially mimic the IDA board. So you're all members, actually, of the Civic Facilities Corporation. We haven't really conducted any business because there hasn't been much business to conduct until now. So what we are looking to do is essentially resurrect it. We'll be, if this is a go with the library project, we'll have a full slate of resolutions that basically omnibus resolution that kind of brings us from the past up to the present. Just any business that we would have conducted would have been in the regular course of business, and then going forward, we'll consider the authorization for the library refinancing.
At that time, we'd be able to do.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the kind of the end game here as it relates to this board, but sitting as the board of directors for the Civic Facilities Corporation. So it'd just be probably a meeting, a real quick one, either before or after our next IDA meeting to adopt what's likely to be some type of either an initial resolution or maybe even a fuller slate of documents that move the refinancing forward.
To give you a little bit of a background, we created it because the state restricted IDAs from issuing civic facility bonds. For what reason, we don't know, but they did. We created this with the county in anticipation because historically, at that time, we had done many civic facility bond financing projects with a hospital, with some of these senior living facilities, Springside, Bishop Commons.
Or was it that or St. Francis?
With St. Francis, we did St. Francis. We also did but we did a whole bunch of projects, probably 6 or 7 projects in a period of about 10 years through the IDA. So we anticipated that to continue, and then the state started funding pretty much all hospital-related facilities with grant money. Obviously, a hospital don't want to borrow money when they can get it for free. So that basically killed off that program, or there was no demand. The only demand we had, and we did this before the civic facility was the last one we did, was with Oswego County Opportunities with their office complex in the city of Fulton. We did that, but we did that through the IDA, not through the new corporation.
We haven't done any
No,
No.
not through the corporation.
No, this would be the first, and I think the timing of it is such that as Miranda pointed out, the board is going to be further briefed at their meeting in September. And I think if all kind of falls in place, we're looking at potential closing on or before the end of the year, which would fit with, you know, the library's time frame, and it gives us enough time as, you know, the attorneys involved in all of this, that we don't anticipate a problem if the school district is willing to go forward with this.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody else have any questions or anything? Get this thing resurrected, up and running again.
Yeah.
So, Miranda, did you have anything else that you wanted?
No, I just wanna thank everyone for their help with this project.
Oh,
It's very
quite welcome.
appreciated.
Libraries, it's a fantastic library. I was down there during construction of it quite a bit, and
Oh, yeah,
I'm taking my granddaughter down there, so it's a nice facility.
great, thank you.
And you're welcome to stay and help yourself if you want coffee or anything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I'm gonna take the 4, 5, and 6 items under executive session and take them down, we'll do them at the end. So, we'll jump down to number 7, the Oswego County Industrial Park, funding request for Oswego County. The letter was written by Kevin.
Yeah, if I could just kind of back up or give you just a brief amount of context here. If you recall, at our last meeting, as the minutes reflect, we were scheduled to close on the roughly 200 acres, a little shy of 200 acres adjacent to the industrial park. Gary signed all the deed conveyance documents right after the meeting last month, and that next day we closed. So we were now all stewards in ownership of the property adjacent to the industrial park, part of an expansion. We then, during the last Operation Oswego County Executive Committee meeting, we were kind of going through, you know, issues related to strategic planning, long-term planning, and the idea of the expansion project at the industrial park came up. Dave Turner, of course, being on the executive committee, mentioned it might not be a bad idea to let the county, you know, government and leadership there know that the IDA has this project, has you know, is formulating a budget, and with the American Rescue Plan Act funding that's available to the county, you know, may not be a bad idea to at least start the process of getting somebody's attention, and you know, with the chance of it of monies being allocated. Dave mentioned that, you know, right now it's more informal. The county, and I know, I'm sure Tim and Morris can update us a little bit more on this, but the county's going through a application process, establishing a criteria and kind of a protocol on how monies are to be used. It's the county's allocation. There are obviously rules coming down from the federal government on how and what the monies can be used for, but what the amount of work and infrastructure improvements that are going to be needed, that we've talked about for, you know, months if not years, certainly seems to fit right into those discussions and potential use of monies that are available to the county. But it starts with an ask, and so that's what we, the executive committee of Operations Oswego County, was encouraged to do. But recognizing that the IDA is the owner of the property, it was thought best to, you know, run it by the IDA. I've prepared a letter, just again, generally, I'm going to keep it more of at a high level at the moment, and then depending on when and how the county releases its application process and the criteria, we can kind of hone in on a definitive application and additional information. So that's the origin or the basis for the letter that was drafted. It is a draft. It's by no means intended to be the final product, but happy to answer questions or maybe get a little more insight to the extent it's available.
But let me throw in something. The bulk of focus so far on proposed grant applications have been oriented toward enhancing and improving the wastewater treatment facility in the village of Phoenix, which is critical. This focus is more on the actual physical development of the property, which is different. They blend together, but this is isolating out, developing the land, getting the infrastructure extended into the land. At the same time, we're working on trying to enhance the Village of Phoenix wastewater treatment facility. And it's one kind of feeds the other. I mean, if we don't have a plan or some action lined up to why bother expanding the wastewater treatment? So one kind of plays against the other in terms of being, supportive of it. And since we own the property, the ID owns the property. And I think the money can be used for water and sewer. The extension of water and sewer is critical to this industrial park.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions or comments on Kevin's letter? I read it yesterday afternoon, and I responded. I thought, for the most part right now, it's a good letter. It's short, concise. Kind of lets them know that what we're going to be looking at. We can get specifics to them at a later date, hopefully.
Well, and just to further illustrate that, we had asked Dave in the context of that meeting, what are you seeing, by way of request? And he said it runs the gamut. It's, an email from an interested party to, a more formal letter to, submission of documents and plans. So we felt that it was important to make it a little more official and direct the request coming from the IDA on IDA's letterhead, but not get too bogged down in technicalities, because frankly, it's still a work in process. I mean, those of us who've been involved in it, we've come up with maybe 3 or 4 conceptual drawings and renderings and budgets, right? And they run the gamut, as it's pointed out in the letter, from essentially a low of $9 million up to $14 million, depending on the conceptual drawing or plan that's implemented. Some of them have on ramp and off ramp to 481. Some of them don't. The interior road configurations are different. Depends on who's interested in the project, in the property. I mean, if you had a single potential, industry or buyer for it, or multiples like we do next door with the industrial park. So there's a lot still kind of at play here, and so we felt it was best to kind of keep it general, but at least get in the queue, right? So that when the county further develops their criteria, we'll be on somebody's radar.
Yeah, I think it's a good letter. When I read it, though, the last 2 sentences both begin with "in the meantime." Just, I just thought, in other words,
Yep.
I would take "in the meantime" off that last sentence, right?
Yeah.
The other question I have, who and how is going to make the decision on the layout? I mean, we've been presented 3 different layouts. Is it going to be, are we going to be waiting to do any infrastructure work over there until we get somebody interested in the site, or are we going to go ahead and make a decision ahead of time on the layout and then build the infrastructure before we have anybody interested in the site over there?
I think the way the designs are laid out, you have a lot of flexibility in terms of physically identifying the specific acreage for a project is defined by that project. The big thing here is there's one option C has a plan for a significant large acreage user at the northern or western end of the site. And from a standpoint of figuring out which of these budgets we should deal with, I mean, I think we should look at, because what one would want to see is a large, at least one large scale development in that industrial park. I mean, we've had interest in an industrial park for 800, 500, 1 million square feet before, until we got into water and sewer and then we got knocked out. But still, the concept that we were also talking about with Dave Botar about some EDA funding for the project is with the emphasis on the White Pines project in Syracuse for a chip fab plant or something like that as an industrial park that can have businesses that would complement that couldn't go into that site because of the large scale nature of that site. So that is an avenue that Turner and we're talking about pursuing, trying to get EDA funding to do some of this as well. And in my belief, I think that option C is probably the better option because it can meet the demands of a large scale project as well as smaller scale projects.
And I think to Mike's point though too, you've got, you know, the infrastructure, right? So you can from the expansion site, we're talking conveyance, right, of sewer primarily.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need a pump station or anything of that nature there because it's going to be conveyed off-site and down ultimately into the village. So that's a critical part of this whole process. We don't convey anything unless, you know, the village is set up to receive it. That's one thing. We've talked to with National Grid too about getting you know, an additional substation set up or improving or increasing the capacity. So those are things that frankly can be done because we've identified, you know, a convenient site for that. Right?
Yeah, but don't you need the road? I mean, you've got to have an idea of where the road's going to be.
Yeah, but you don't have to build the whole road system out. You can extend it in to serve the first two sides as a way to get into the site and then go whatever direction the development ultimately takes.
And that's, you know, we purposely kept Harris Road, as I'd mentioned
Yeah,
last
right.
month, Harris Road actually goes into the project,
Right.
to the property, and then it just evaporates, right? But it's still, on paper, it's still a town road. So that's one way of getting in, and then of course, coming in through the existing park. And there's, so all of the conceptual drawings, I think, actually incorporate some aspect of those two points of entrance.
When we developed the initial industrial park, roughly 180 acres or so, we did not subdivide, create sites, because we didn't know who we were going to be dealing with. And it's worked out well. We're filling them in as we go, and we may, in the near future, be pretty much out of sites in that industrial park. So just to be able to extend the water to sewer to pick up another 40 to 50 acres would be a tremendous asset for us in terms of attracting a significant project.
Just to add a little bit, in terms of our discussions with CNS companies, all the options have pretty much the same road entrance area going in. It's all the same. It pretty much it splits when it gets into the site considerably in terms of, do you do a loop, do you just do kind of a cul-de-sac? You know, how do you do that? So I think that looking at this, there would be some road extension in, no matter what. I think some of it's going to come down to funding as well. Do we get the EDA funding? Do we not get the EDA funding? Is there other funding that's available? I think the $9 to $14 million is kind of the full build-out cost, depending on the option you do. But you could probably do a significant amount of work and get some done for $4 million, $5 million, $6 million, no matter what option you do. And it's really going to come down to when we hit a certain certain level of funding do we decide, okay, we're gonna go forward and say do phase one? And this is phase one, you know, you build it 2,500 feet in, say a 5,000 foot road, you do go 2,500 feet in, you stop here until you get to the next section of funding or demand to bring it in the rest of the way.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, because there's a lot of money available
Sure.
now.
Yep.
Right now.
Yep.
And a few years down the road, it might not be available.
Correct.
So if we were to get that 9,000, say 9 million,
Mhm.
you know, would we be prepared then to go ahead and put the infrastructure
I
in?
think we would be, yeah, I think that's
And then we have to make a decision on pretty much on the layout then.
right. Yeah, and I think Mike said it, the option C gives us the most flexibility, where I think that with option C, it's kind of designed for, say, a 200,000 square foot warehouse at the end, but what happens if it's 400 or 500? Well, then you don't put the road as far, you know what I mean? You kind of increase the size of that site, you pull it back, and then that becomes larger at the end, and then the rest of it shortened, but I think that.
Well, see, yeah, I mean, if you filled up until you got to the large site and you didn't have anybody interested in it, you could easily split that too.
Yep. Exactly, so I think,
We gotta remember too, directly north is another 6, 7, 800 acres of land that's not developed, all the way up to
Yeah.
Bankrupt Road.
there are some limitations trying to go over that. You'd have to be careful. You wouldn't be able to build directly on that because there's a Dominion gas line that goes up through there. So that's kind of a bisecting thing. But you could go over it, go around it. You just can't build on top of it. So that was sort of the natural spot to stop this development.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Morris, Tim, two sitting legislators, you guys have any,
Well, my only
Yes.
comment is this is agricultural land for the most part right now, and a lot of that. I wanna bring in emphasis on,
But it's zoned industrial.
okay, what I'm trying to say is, we have water spots and wetlands and so on. Tile drainage should be a big player when we can use it and how we can use it, because it transforms it from a wetland into areas of dry, fed with a perforated tile, if you remember that.
oh yeah.
That kind of stuff can be developed and pick up land and stuff. Just a comment. Having worked with that in my lifetime, it's an attribute in the sense of getting more dried land. Thanks, Morris.
Yeah, we've had a number of conversations within the legislature about kind of the process going forward. Dave has been involved in all of them, so I'm sure you guys are up to date on the process at this point. We are not expecting to move very quickly on that money, although it does have to be obviously committed in the next couple of years. So the process currently is to get a letter of interest, something like this, informal, but more just to kind of get on the radar, almost like a pre-application almost. But the actual application process, we're still working on how we're going to formally do that. I know we're looking at some software and things like that that'll help out. But all that said, I would encourage us as a board to see if there are other items that we want to consider. I mean, this is, probably once in our board lifetime monies that's available, and the county is encouraging anyone with an idea. A lot of what the IDA does is overlapped within what are the options for using that funds. So the other thing I wanted to mention was we have put a CFA application in as a county to help consider and create potentially a infrastructure authority, which we've been talking about as an IDA board for a number of years now. So if that is awarded, then there could be some startup funds, and I'm sure there'd be a lot more communication at that point with this board and the legislature, because there's a little bit of an overlap, and I know it's something Nick has been very passionate about in the years past. So if we are able to get that, there were a number of municipalities who signed on saying they were interested, a few of the ones we've talked about, many of them that have some of the raw materials for what that would look like. So the hope would be, if that happens, we could look at getting an actual authority set up similar like what Dank has up north. That would really make, again, more funding opportunities and more full-time labor that would be interested in doing that too. So, obviously those discussions down the road. But as far as this board goes, or even Operations Oswego County Board, I don't know if there's other interest. We've talked a little bit about the idea of the current loans the emergency loans that we put out, that we helped out by Operations Oswego County. There was discussion about maybe a loan forgiveness of those loans. The room more seemed interested in a case-by-case basis instead of a broad, everyone's forgiven. We're more interested in showing need. So kind of towards our Operations Oswego County staff, it might not be a terrible idea to work directly with any of those businesses that could still show an effect on COVID. So my thought was, if you've got some businesses that received the emergency loan and maybe have had issues paying it back, they could put together a letter of interest similar to what we did to the county, and then they kind of get on the in the queue list. So that might be helpful. I don't get the feeling that they're going to look to do a full everyone's forgiven. I think they're really going to try and be more targeted. So if that's helpful.
No, that is, I've talked to a few businesses that called me, gotten the $10,000 because in anticipation of a struggle, but then they found out things didn't go as badly as they thought it was gonna be, so they're looking to return that,
Sure.
actually, so.
And then I don't know if there's any other projects that we've talked about that we've helped in the past, any other larger employers or even some smaller ones that you can think of, board or anybody we've interacted with. But again, to encourage them to put together a similar letter like this, that could be then supplied to the board or to the legislature would be helpful.
What about, just to throw it out, because we're still struggling with it, was the Nestle development, but that facility, because due to escalating costs in terms of actually developing it, the last grant we got, we're basically, it's a wash. I mean, we're still short. I mean, we're significantly short in terms of being able to start that project.
Do we have anybody lined up for that, or is it still the plan would be to build it and they'll come?
You're not going to get anybody lined up for a building that's going to be a year and a half away.
The only reason I say that is
We've had interest in it.
the application process, it may be more helpful if there's a name attached to it, was the only thing I'm thinking, even if it was a potential name, only because we're gonna have as the, either Operations Oswego County or as the IDA, we're gonna have our name on another application, other applications, may be helpful to have another name on it if possible, but if not, then, it is what it is. But the whole point of this is once in a, board lifetime money, they're gonna look to do the best they can for the longest time. The joke is always, our grandchildren will be paying for this, let's give them something that they can pay it back with. And so how do we invest enough where they can afford it? It's a board joke. But what I would encourage, Mike, I think that makes sense, especially if you can show the need for it. And talk to Dave. Dave is the best one to chat with on that. I think it makes sense to have a few things in the hopper.
Thanks, Tim. But what I'd like to do is get board approval for this letter, send it, or we send it
I'll
out.
move it.
Okay, motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the letter to the county requesting American Rescue
Wait a
Plan
minute,
Fund.
Should,
Maybe I
or
should,
not.
yeah, I just was thinking about that.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't
I'll
second it.
Okay, second by Barry. To refer funding request from the county for the American Rescue Plan funds. Now, everybody had a chance to look at the letter, other than our recording secretary, going through it with a fine tooth comb and finding just one little thing, but it was a good catch.
Yeah.
Good catch, Lance.
Very good.
Is there anything else that needs to be done?
I think the final sentence of the third paragraph has a incorrect word in it. Is it supposed to be probable costs, I'm assuming?
Made it probable. Yeah.
Other than that,
Yep.
it's good to me.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. Any other,
You all passed the test. I did that in
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll send the letter out. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, for drafting it for us. Okay, number 8, the engagement letter to Grossman St. Louis.
This is for the audit for fiscal year ending 7/31/21. The amount of the where is it? You're jumping around. You got me.
We don't have a
Totally.
copy. I didn't see a copy of it here.
I don't know where you
You
are.
didn't hear it.
The audit amount is $1,550. last year it was 11,100, so it's a 4% increase. Excellent working relationship with Grossman, and they get it streamlined where it flows quickly, and they do a good job, and certainly recommend that we authorize to sign this engagement letter. You can my name on it.
Okay, thanks. Anybody have any questions for Mike on the,
When I was quickly scanning the minutes, I thought, who the heck's getting engaged?
Well, you gotta get engaged with an auditor to get the job
it's a very intimate relationship.
Yeah, right.
Have we, if I could, how long have we had Grossman State of Morning?
That's not the relevant. The relevant thing is the lead has to change every 5 years. So the lead right now is Christina Androcro. I think she's got 1 more year left, and it would have to go to another.
No, I'm sorry. I was more asking the question, how long have we had this firm?
Probably had this firm when did the state pass the regulation that they had to change every 5 years because we couldn't use Jack Alter anymore. He used
Yeah, I was
to do
gonna
it.
say, yeah, I bet we're 9. I bet
Yeah, we had,
Probably
what was
was Beard.
Beard, yeah.
Beard did it for 5 years,
Yeah.
and she is, I think, in her 9th year.
Yeah,
So not 9th year, 4th year.
Yeah.
In doing it. Then it would have to go to another.
Do we
member
have
of the
anything
law
else?
firm.
There's nothing in our bylaws that requires going out to bid. There's no, I mean, obviously the price is the price.
We did that.
That's what I'm asking, okay.
We did that to select this firm.
9 years.
When Jack Alter was ruled by regulation that he could not do it because he was a one-man shop and had no ability to.
The only reason I ask, we've seen at the county and other places that, you just keep signing the annual renewal. Sometimes you don't realize it, but you can be 12 years out of, competitive pricing. And I just was curious if we
We're
went
not
through
out
that.
of competitive. In fact, I'm surprised it's this level. I would-
Just with your
If I
knowledge
had-
of the
if I had
overall
to guess-
cost of the
If
county.
I had to guess, when we started out with someone new, plus when starting out with someone new, you spend 2 years kind of training each other, and it's more expensive, so they spend a lot more time.
I do remember when we first started, it took a lot more staff time too, getting them used to how we do things and what they're looking for and everything else. And so it's actually helped us in terms of cutting it down from maybe 3-4 weeks of our time to less than a week.
Okay, any other comments or questions regarding the engagement letter to Grossman? So you need a motion on this, right, Michael? Okay, okay, motion by Tim, seconded by Morris. Motion by Tim Stahl, seconded by Morris Orbello to enter into an engagement letter with Grossman. Any more questions?
And we'll say, I'll tell you when the wedding date will be, okay?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. There you go, Michael. Okay, number 9, SG Ontario Sun LLC, change in ownership.
A change in ownership in a solar company?
Never had
Well,
this.
9 and 10 are basically the same.
So you might as well just,
I mean, it's, where would, you want me to start that out?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Finish it up too.
Yeah.
We gotta do these contracts on the dry erase board, so we can just kind of change the name whenever we want.
Well,
we were
it's,
talking
you
about
know,
that- we were
it's
talking
been
about that
pretty
earlier. Everyone we've done, except Mike thinks of one, that you guys can remember have done this.
And they
Yeah.
all say they're not going to.
it's clearly a pattern that has been established. It's, I guess, the nature of this business where a company will come in and identify land, sign up leases or acquire the land, and then go and get the municipal approvals, whether it's zoning, planning, site plan, whatever, and then the IDA benefits. And then when it gets time to actually finance and pay for the project and get it underway, we've been getting phone calls saying, hey, we have a new interested buyer or owner or member, you know, different, it runs the gamut. Some companies buy the membership interest of the underlying company that established it, like for instance, Summit Solar Capital, SSC. We did the project in Scriva and the one in town of Oswego, and then they came back and they did another one in the city of Oswego. They're now partnered with Goldman Sachs. You know, and it's usually the financial part of it that they're, you know, they're partnering with or somehow being bought out by the financial people.
There's gotta be money in this, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it.
Sure. So
Is it just a specialty thing? Is it kind of like the idea of almost like a baseball game with a pitching staff? You got your starter who knows that piece, and you got your middle relief, and maybe your closer at the end.
There's another face to this we haven't seen. So there are people out there developing these solar projects, and they get a lot of money to do it when they sell the project. Then there's investment companies that buy them because there's tax credits, and they can use those tax credits. In another 5 or 6 years for each of these, we're going to see another sale to a portfolio of generation companies. So Goldman Sachs isn't particular, maybe, but I mean, maybe they're interested in generating solar power, but their real interest is getting, like, milking these things for these tax credits that they get when they're built. And they can't use tax credits unless they have a profit. So if they bring it into their ownership for a few years, they can use tax credits from one entity to absorb profits somewhere else. That's my understanding. And then when that's milked dry, there'll be another sale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's important that we always have it in the document, but you know, in terms of consent, and if you're going to transfer or assign or seek an assumption of the IDA's benefits, that you need to come to us first to get our approval. Some have, and candidly, some have jumped the gun and have actually sold their interest and then said, "Oh, gee, we didn't realize we had to come and get the approval." Number 9, SG Sun, is one of those that went ahead. We got a phone call a couple of weeks back saying we were looking to change ownership. We said, okay, well, let's set up a call, and so we did. Now, this is the fellow that, I don't know where is he Canadian?
I'm not sure.
I don't, well, it's the project up in, one of the projects up in Sandy Creek, right?
It's off of right next to Cedar Shores Road.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one. Yeah.
And they actually had purchased the land and are looking to change ownership. By the time we got to the phone call, we realized they had actually changed ownership. They have a company, a private equity firm out of New York that is taking over the interest. We then found out that the underlying ownership of the land was in a completely different company's name, still owned by the same guy we've been dealing with all along. But he's the guy that, had asked that if he could pay his fees in chunks, so in thirds. So he's paid 2 of the 3. Actually, I think he's paid.
Now he's paid all 3.
Now he's paid all 3. Yeah. So we had a couple of phone calls. We had a phone call with this fellow, Paul McMenemy. He shared with all the documents. Once we looked at them, we realized, you've already transferred the interest. So we really need to speak to the new owner here and make sure that they're on the same page with all the requirements. So we had a phone call last week with that ownership group as well. And I think to Kevin's point, it's a Wall Street company, and they're getting into the ownership management of these facilities at this point in time.
Kevin, can we look to add a transactional fee? There's no way we could plan on having, we do our normal fee, the 15 years or whatever the 4 transactions,
Yeah.
administrative oversight, phone calls, things like that.
Yeah.
Can we write into that some sort of transactional fee that we could add as an agency to these? It wouldn't have to be huge, and if they didn't transact, it wouldn't matter. But again, it's additional staff time that we're not
Well,
planning for.
It's a good point, Tim, and you know, to that point, Paul McMenemy now flush with funds because he sold his interest. You know, clearly offered voluntarily, said, look, I know that this is taking a lot, so please, you know, charge me, bill me. If there's fees, I'll pay them. You know, but I'm really, you know, I'm asking that this occur, and I apologize that I got ahead of myself and signed these agreements, you know, before coming to the IDA for this approval. I mean, we have a level of comfort with the transaction, and it's not really, when you break it down, it's not really different than what we've seen previously with other solar companies and even other just companies that have changed ownership. You know, it's
So if we have a fee that is based on, you know, the initial transaction, that's the percent of our fee originally. If we know ahead of time that there's going to be 2 or 3 of these for every one of our projects for the next 15 years, it may make sense to have something in there that will, especially if these folks are making a bunch of money off it on the transaction. I don't know that it's unreasonable for us to look into receiving some additional fees for that.
The other thing I was thinking is that, can we bring them up to our current standards policy, which they may not be?
Yeah, well, I think most everyone now is,
Okay.
with the possible.
Well, we had quite a few that, well, maybe
Yeah,
half
we
a
did the
dozen
one
or
that,
so.
the
in
Summit
beginning.
Solar one in Scriba, I think we had originally committed to 3,500 a megawatt.
Yeah, but the ones before that too, the ones up in Richland
Yeah.
and Sandy Creek, I mean, they were less.
Right, yeah.
So, so my question is that when they do this, can we bring them up to, yeah, fine, we'll do it, but you gotta meet our standard, policy? Something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple of different structures that we're seeing, and I think I had mentioned it. Some are buying just the membership interest in the existing company, but it's clearly a different owner, so it triggers our consent provisions.
Wouldn't that require, if you change the term of a pilot to go through the public notice
Yeah.
process, then the whole shooting match?
Yeah,
To change it.
Okay, so we just couldn't
We couldn't just-
say they have
Yeah.
to conform to our
Yeah.
Now,
current policy.
Now, there may be, although I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but there's a project that I'm aware of in the town of Scriba, and I'm not even sure they've come to you. Omni Navitas is selling all of their assets. Now, the next,
It took me that long to learn how to say it.
well, yeah, but the good news is the next company is much easier, Green Street.
Oh, Green Street, okay.
ABC Solar or something.
But so they are in the case in Scriba, they're changing the whole thing. So they may actually have to come back and do a whole new agreement and the whole bit. But they were set at $5,000 a megawatt anyway. In that case.
Yeah, Len, I think Tim and Len both make good points. Tim's point about covering all expenses, maybe not so much a fee, covering any expenses incurred by the IDA for the transfer of ownership to it. Is that covered by the buyer?
Yeah, well, buyer or seller. I mean, between the two of them, will be sure before we're going to, consent to it, because it will require an executed document by the IDA.
Mm-hmm.
That we have to make sure that all.
There's so much per signature.
I mean,
So it's-
I just want to make sure we're whole when we,
So they go through you, what about Barclay Damon?
Yeah, no,
Also.
we're all in it
All of it.
together, right?
Yeah, you're
So
right.
those yeah, sure, those transactional costs need to be covered. It shouldn't be something that the IDA absorbs.
And, again, sometimes, I have to ask a question again to understand it.
Mhm.
But Len's point on the policy, our solar policy, the 5,000, decommissioning, all that stuff, that's transfers to the new owner also, right?
Absolutely.
Automatically?
Yeah, they're, when they buy, when you consent to a transfer of ownership, they take it all. They take all, they take the IDA as the original owner, entered into contracts with, so.
Because the bond's not with us, the bonds that they have or whatever's with the town or municipality.
Well, yeah, you're talking about a decommissioning bond,
Right,
right? So, and clearly this market is so new that, we're all kind of wondering what's going to happen 20, 30 years from now when these sites get decommissioned, right? But yeah, it's typically the municipality that contracts with the company to establish a decommissioning bond.
And all we're doing is making sure they have one.
I was just gonna add, I think that what Tim brought up in terms of, because I think the way it currently works is if they come back and consent, the only other fees that they would have would be the new legal fees associated with that, but there's no new money, there's no new fee being generated to the
We do
IDA.
charge a $250 fee.
250, okay, 250.
I mean, the initial fee for the IDA is $500, so.
Right.
Plus 0.75% of the project cost.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of where I was leaning towards.
Yeah, but maybe it's like 1/4% or something like that, where it's not like what it originally was, but it's a substantial sum to at least make them think about how they're gonna do it.
Well, my thought too is if you put it into the initial contract, then the person who's selling it will be the seller is going to be signing the original contract. Well, that's the person we just heard is going to do pretty well on that transaction. I don't think that we, by adding an additional 3/8% or something like that, half of the original, right, something like that, I don't think we need. I mean, we don't have to justify our initial fee. We don't give it an hourly breakout. It's 3/4 of 1%. That is the transaction cost for you. Will you do it? Yes, good. Still worth it for you. You continue. I think it's worth looking into all this transactional stuff. It's not a terrible thought that if they're making all that extra money, and it's through the process that we put in place, I think that it's okay to say we can share potentially in some of that. We will at least cover our expenses, potentially make a little bit more. I don't think it's.
So we have a policy, if there's a refi, which some projects you refi the bonds, you don't charge the same fee on the refis. I think it's maybe a quarter of 1% as opposed to 3/4 of 1%.
Well, yeah, like with Miranda here, I mean, there will be some transactional costs for the refinancing of the library bonds if it comes to pass. But it won't be the original fees that were charged.
so with this change of ownership of solar, is that 1/4 included in the, is that fee? No?
No, because they're not doing bonds associated with that. It's just
It's
a
for
pilot
that.
agreement transfer.
I think especially it's a good point because based on what you guys are saying, there could be additional transactions, changes.
Well, I think Kevin brings up a really good point, after 5 years when the Wall Street guys have kind
Yeah.
of picked the bones, they're gonna sell it to some other company that's gonna, and you're seeing it now, I mean, some of these companies are multiple sites, I mean, I'm not sure if I think it is the company that's taking over, didn't they say they have,
Sunlight General that's taking over SG Ontario has 300 systems, 140 in New York State.
there you go.
So is this what Tim's referring to, is that something we can look at?
Absolutely, yeah.
For future kids.
Yeah.
If they are assuming the pilot in 5,000, whatever the number is, I mean, you could base it on the percent of the remaining years of the pilot as relative to the original amount as a way to calculate something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I just ran the numbers quick. It was a $2.5 million project, 1/4, 1%, 6,250. It's not going to break their bank on it, but it's going to at least be something to
Yeah.
make it worth the IDA's time to.
How will we base it? I think,
I think to your point, we do it now.
Could do it now, you could amend this.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that particularly this company, and I suspect that the next company, GSPP, which is number 10, are fully expecting to pay some transactional costs here.
I feel like they're going to make more than $6,000 on it.
But we do it now with these guys, but he's saying in the future, we're gonna write something in there,
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but you can, I mean, if we
which makes sense.
I think so. 'Cause
want
That's pretty clear.
for,
a lot of these guys know they're gonna resell at some point, and so they see 3/4, 1%, they see 1%, they say, okay, the transaction cost is 1%, I know that's what it's gonna be, but 3/4 now, quarter down the road, whatever it is. They'll know.
Sounds good. Any other discussion? And, Ontario Sun? I guess we need a motion to,
I'll make the motion.
grant a change of ownership. Okay, motion by Tim, seconded by Lynn Schiff. Any other discussion? In this, you're gonna draft something to include in this as far as a transactional fee and,
yeah, are we comfortable with 1/4%?
or whatever, you know, percentage of the pilot.
Motion,
They get
So, okay, we got a motion and a second.
okay.
For discussion purposes, just to put this in context, this particular one isn't even up and running yet. So,
It's
you know, it's a full,
Right.
it would be the full amount, right? But as we get going on this, maybe 5 years down the road, we see another one, you know, then there might be a calculation to be done. But this one and the next one, number 10, both of them have not even generated 1 kilowatt.
Yeah, so maybe it's prorated based, 1/4% prorated on that, but if they still got full 20 years, it's a full thing.
Sure, yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the change of ownership of Ontario Sun. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Alright,
Opposed? Okay. Ontario Sun is carried. And Kevin, we've got the next one.
Yeah, so, again, Omni Navitas has been selling off many of their assets to this new company called Green Street Power Partners. And this is a project that's located in the town of Hastings, I believe. And again, has not generated one kilowatt, but they are already transferring their interest. And as I had mentioned previously, I'm aware that this same company is now purchasing, or maybe in the process of purchasing, the project that was approved out in Scriba off of 104 and County Route 29. Did they come to us yet? So they haven't even come, they haven't even come to us on that one yet. They got site plan approval from the town, but anyway, that's a separate project. This one is the Hastings project. We had a very productive meeting a couple of weeks back with, again, Barclay Damon's team, myself, and then folks from Green Street. They had also supplied a new application because they were changing some aspects of it. They took the existing application and I believe they supplemented it with some additional information. That's-
Well, they did send in a new application,
Okay,
actually, in this
right.
case. They've revised the project costs as well from 8,465,000 to 5,387,000 and some change. Variety of cost reductions kind of across the board. So it doesn't look, I mean, I don't know the details of how those cost savings would drive, but it's a significant reduction.
They
So-
change the production or no?
No, the size of the solar plant is the same, which I actually have with me. Yeah. Oh, no, it's right here. 3.1 megawatts, yeah, 23 acres, but.
So in this case, and I think this is true with most of these because they're not, materially increasing the project scope or size. We are of the opinion that just the consent is necessary, not a, rehearing, opening up the public hearings, or doing the rest of the approval process. And in this case, yeah, as Kevin pointed out, they're scaling it back. A lot of them are just taking it over turnkey, but in this case, they looked at it and they wanted to make some modifications, but they're modifying it downward, not increasing it.
And the pilot payment schedule would stay the same, so the
Correct.
municipalities would.
Exactly. So, so again, we're making a recommendation that the board consent to the change in ownership from Omni to Green Street.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Is there two amendments? Is there two?
I think, well, the other one is just amendments to the application. It's just,
Covered all in one?
yeah, to accept the change in ownership and the amendment to the application.
Okay, do I have a motion on the Hastings solar project?
I'll move it.
Okay, motion by Barry Trimble, seconded by
I'll second.
Norris Sorbello. Is there any other further discussion? Same terms and conditions that we discussed in the previous one, right?
Yeah, and as it relates to the fees charged.
Perfect. Okay, any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Are we talking about the total project cost, 4%, or the pilot revenues generated? What was the line?
I think it would be the total project cost.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it's hard to determine, well, on these ones, it's easier to determine, but on ones where it's based on assessed value, how are you gonna do that?
In some cases though, the project cost has dropped.
It is, I mean, this
In
one.
this one, yeah, the project cost dropped by about $3 million.
Did they already pay the fees on the original project costs, or have they not paid the fees yet?
I don't, we have not closed on that.
We haven't
yet.
closed,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they've also reduced what they're gonna pay us.
Yeah.
Okay,
Did
before
you
we
go
go
to
to,
11?
I was gonna do other business before we went into executive session.
Think just like me, Gary. Something's wrong with you. Now, the only thing I wanted to say on number 11, too, because the tentative agenda had the Island Animal Hospital on it. We had the public hearing in the town of Hastings last Friday. The reason it was removed from the agenda is because the seeker process, because the subdivision hasn't been officially completed yet. So seeker has not been complied with, so we had to move it. Doesn't really affect anything. That's probably gonna be done, what, in the next 2 to 3 weeks?
Mhm.
And then we can move forward.
It might be a couple of months, Mike, by the time they have their final, might be November,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay. Anyway, they're not impacted with it. Everything is moving good with the bank, and so we had a tour of the facility, and I can guarantee you, I've never been in an animal hospital where everybody was so good, working together and moving around, and tight quarters, but a really busy little. Now they're gonna double the size of the facility, and it was amazing. We both got X-rays.
Did you bark?
Give me an X-ray. No, it's so that project is still moving ahead very, very, very quickly. Just a couple of snags that slowed it down a little bit.
Do we have, I know it's another business, when we did the City of Oswego DRI, the IDA was instrumental, with meetings with each of the awardees. Now that the City of Fulton has had their individual awards, have those businesses started working, with you folks here at the IDA?
We're working with the ones that, a few of them, a lot of, unlike Oswego, where virtually every project was a private sector project, Fulton is not that way. The majority of things are municipal projects,
No,
are not for profit projects. Yeah.
but we are working with the ones we can work with, at this point.
Okay, anything else under other business? Okay, Mike, let's schedule our next meeting before we go back into executive session.
Okay.
We might wanna consider the library's board meeting scheduled for the next meeting, because most likely we'll have something.
Yeah, so the board meetings for the library is scheduled on September 7th and September 14th.
But some of the dates that I was looking at in terms of the logistics, was, September 21, September 23, or September 30th.
21 and 23 are good, wide open for me. The 30th.
The
30th is
auditors
good
are
too.
here on the week of the 20th,
What?
September 20th. The
The
auditors
auditors.
are here that week. So,
Physically here.
physically, yeah.
Okay, we should have it on 21, we can get them out. But none of these dates conflict with them.
No,
Okay.
no, I just wanted to know.
Okay,
So what, the 20th, 21st, and 30th, you said?
21, 23, 30.
Or 21, 23, and 30
Okay.
of September. Is there a preferable date for anybody?
21st is better for me as far as being here.
23?
21st.
21st, I'm good on the 21st. Kevin,
I'm good either, yep.
what do you two?
Sherman?
Morris?
I really don't know, but I'll put it down.
Len? Yep. So why don't we go the 21st? That's a Tuesday. What time do we want to meet? 8 or 9?
9 seems to work.
9?
Fine,
Okay, so Tuesday, September 21st at 9 a.m.
So what's gonna happen at your meeting?
Oh, at the board meeting, so, on September 7, we're having a Zoom meeting with, Craig from Baird and Matt from Bond, Schoenig and King.
Oh, okay,
And they're
okay.
doing a
You're
presentation,
gonna be on
and
there
the
too?
board will discuss it. I hope to have a vote on that day. If the board
Is there something you
needs
did?
more information, we're having a call on September 10, and we'll discuss it. Then the board will meet again on 9/14. So I told the board president that we really need to get a vote in September to close in December. Bond Schoenig and King told us if we don't vote in September, they might not be able to close in December. The next date is June, and by then their interest rates might be higher, so it might not be worth it. So we're really gonna try to get the board to approve. I think they are gonna approve, they just wanted to talk to Craig, because Matt's actually, he's in the legal field, and, Craig from Baird, he is more financial, so
Oh, okay.
that's why they wanted to meet here.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Miranda, thank you very much.
Thank
We're
you
gonna
so
go into
much.
executive session now, so
Sure. Okay,
you.
thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Keep us informed too, all right?
I will read them all, please.
Okay, do I have a motion to go into executive session?
I'll make it.
A motion by Tim Stahl, seconded by
Second.
Barry Trimble. At what time, Lynn?
10, 11.
10:11. Okay, motion and a second to go into executive session. And Kevin, the reason we're going to executive session is?
To discuss the financial history of a particular corporation or individual.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, carried. We're into executive session.
started, sorry.
Okay, do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
I'll make it.
Motion by Morris Cervello, seconded by
Second.
Barry Trimble. At what time, Len?
10:48.
10:48. We have a motion and a second to come out of executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Okay, a few agenda items that we need to vote on. The first one is a delinquent loan report that was given us by Kevin Lamontagne. Do I have a motion to accept the delinquent loan report?
I'll move it.
Okay, motion by Morris, or Len,
Second.
second by Tim Stahl. Okay, any questions on the delinquent loan report? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, delinquent loan report is carried. And the next item is a micro enterprise loan for BKH Properties for $25,000. Do I have a motion for Barry Trimble? Do I have a second? I'll second it. Sorry, I like the corn muffins. We have a motion and a second on the micro enterprise loans for BKH Properties. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we have our next meeting scheduled for Tuesday, September 21st at 9 a.m. Is there anything else to discuss? Well, I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.